welcome to the Cotton Club Radio. I'm your host, Cotton Club. Tonight's conversation is going to be a really interesting conversation because when I look at people who consider themselves allies with Black Americans, and when I look at people who consider themselves enemies with Black Americans, the lines get blurry, family. The lines get blurry. So I'm going to call this conversation Wretched Swine of Men, Controlled Opposition. You heard what I said. Wretched Swine of Men, Controlled Opposition. Why do I say wretched swine of men? You know, family, there are a lot of words that can describe a traitor or a backstabber or an enemy. I chose the word wretched swine of men because wretched means miserable. And swine, we know what swine is. Swine is bad for your mind. Give you all kind of cancer, give you all kind of worms in your brain. If you're disciplined, we don't eat swine because it's bad for your mind. And it's the lowest of the low, the pig, lowest of the low. So wretched swine of men appear to be grassroots. They try to listen closely to the grassroots and mirror the grassroots. They try to use grassroots talking points. Be one. They keep a lot of FBAs and they mention many of these individuals are controlled opposition. I'm just going to keep it funky with you, family. These are people who choose sororities over Black American culture and people. They choose a paycheck over Black American culture and people. Financial gain, any kind of upper leverage, they'll choose that over their people. These are people who are normally getting backed by corporations, backed by political parties, and willing to exchange their own inner core and soul for an upper hand or an upper echelon position or a job or whatever. You know these people, family. People like Roland Martin, who uses his platform constantly to denigrate FBAs, to cause and sow confusion, to use his platform to rally his misconstrued troops into believing that Black Americans should be subordinate to immigrants and Black Americans shouldn't really focus on all these millions of immigrants being dumped into our neighborhood and things of that sort. Roland Martin tells you that if you vote for me and I'll set you free. He's one of those individuals that if you vote, things will change. But the problem with that idea, Mr. Roland Martin, is that Black people have been voting for years and ain't nothing changed. So we can't just depend on that. But it's a bigger problem with people like him, these wretched swine of men. These individuals claim that they're grassroots, but when we start looking in what's behind the smoke and mirrors with these individuals, we start to see a bigger picture. We start to see how many of these individuals are funded by higher powers, how many of these individuals would choose Democrat, Republican over their people. And when we're looking at them, we start to notice they're getting big paychecks to spew propaganda. And all in essence, most of their propaganda is aimed toward denigrating Black American people, FBA people. These are controlled opposition, family. These are people who are being paid to sell you a lie. They are being paid to choose a side. They are being paid to put people around them who don't contest their thoughts, who kind of allow them to spew their rhetoric and to second that notion of propaganda that they spew. I want to talk about some other people, these wretched individuals. I want to talk about that 54-1 podcast. with Godfrey and that other Nigerian dude. Because these individuals are controlled opposition as well. When we start to look at them and what they're about, they do the same routine. They pose as grassroots, but when we listen with our ears and when we look with our eyes, they're doing the opposite. They're denigrating FBAs. Every chance they get, they're bringing people on their show who talk foul and have ill intent against Black American people, all under the guise of uniting the diaspora. Well, I want to ask them, 54-1, how can you unite the diaspora by constantly pouring gasoline onto the fire of people denigrating Black Americans and giving them the okay by never confronting that people? You'll hear 54-1 say, is FBA divisive? Is FBA unifying the diaspora or whatever? But they never actually talk about all the hit pieces, all online, all over social media, with all of these content creators talking crazy about Black Americans, saying Black Americans this, saying Black Americans that. I never ever hear. You'll hear Godfrey every now and again talk about it, but Godfrey has been on a hit piece. I don't know what happened to him, because he just got exposed because he was a big faker, controlled opposition, where he made his claim to fame by having Black Americans support him. But then when he didn't need us anymore and he got with the other Nigerian and got backed by corporate money, now all of a sudden you see Godfrey is starting to change. The way he talks is starting to change. But I ask myself, family, why now? We see Roland Martin and his contingent of media propaganda aimed at sowing seeds of deceit to people who don't, really know what foundational Black American means, comparing us to YT supremacists, knowing that's no comparison. How can you compare the people who fight against YT supremacy to YT supremacy? That makes no sense, right? But when he does that, when Roland Martin does that, understand that he knows exactly what he's doing. He's doing exactly what his paymasters told him to do, and that's sow seeds of deceit. By confusing his viewers and other people about what foundational Black American really is, and confusing the fact that foundational Black Americans are being very critical of the Democratic Party right now, and critical of the Republican Party, but we're being very critical of the Democrats because they're the ones responsible for pouring and dumping all these immigrants on top of us. So we have to be very critical, because if we don't be critical, next thing you know, we won't have a say, because you'll have people taking a political office and looking out for their people. So we have to do that same. So why can't Roland Martin say that he understands why FBA is necessary? I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the dark money that's being funded toward him is corporate money coming from certain political parties. So he's controlled opposition. And I'm starting to look at this 54-1 a little different, family, than just some podcasts. Who's backing these people? Who's backing these people? You start to realize, once you start peeling back the layers with them, that they're being backed by corporate money. So whose interest is it to denigrate foundational Black Americans or to sully the reputation and the character of foundational Black Americans by pushing propaganda and lies? Why is the corporate backing 54-1, but giving you Godfrey and the other Nigerian dude as the face of that podcast? But there's big money being pushed through that podcast, family. A lot of people don't know that. Why would they do that? Why would there need to be such a push of corporate dollars behind 54-1? I'll tell you why. Because some reason there's a huge corporate push to nullify this foundational Black American movement. And we know it's coming from various different political sectors, but there's a corporate push Why? Because Black Americans are getting more on code, and we're standing up, and we're saying, and we're looking at people differently. We're looking at certain actors differently. We're looking at certain sports peoples differently. We're looking at entertainment differently. We're realizing that when we were saying there wasn't enough Black people on screen, we needed more Black representation. And then they started going, getting tethers and putting them on screen. And we're saying, hold on, not that kind of Black representation, Black American representation. This is the reason why, family. This is the reason why corporate is getting behind trying to reestablish Pan-Africanism and throw this FBA movement to the ash cans of history. What other reason would corporate need to get behind 54-1 and the propaganda that they're sowing on denigrating FBA every chance they get? Why would they get a corporate backing? See, if it was us, talking about immigrants, this and that, the way 54-1 be talking about Black Americans and, they're divisive and all of this stuff. If we were doing that, you think corporate would back us? No. There has to be an interest there. Anyone who knows business knows that corporate don't back you unless there's interest. There has to be a line of reasoning there, a line of thought, a line that could make sense for corporate to put millions of dollars behind you. So why does corporate want to put millions of dollars behind Pan-Africanism? Why? To us, it's a dying, concept. It's on life support. So Black Americans are not pushing Pan-Africanism in large numbers. Many of us are stepping away from that. But at the same time, it seems that corporate is putting millions of dollars behind it. So family, I want you to see, I want y'all to understand how controlled opposition is funded by corporate dollars against grassroots. Because with the illusion that these individuals are grassroots. Let's look at these individuals. I look at Roland Martin. I remember years ago when I first started watching him, I knew something was off about him. You know what? You know why I knew something was off, family? Whenever I see Negroes pushing a fraternity or a sorority, red flags go up. I don't know, family. I've always looked at Negroes in sororities and fraternities as like they're not for Black people. They're not, man. These are individuals who put their fraternity and their frat ahead of anything. They do their little silly ass dances. They march around looking real silly. They throw up their alpha, beta, their Greek stuff, and they look real ridiculous. You understand? But these are people who most of the time, if given the opportunity, they'll throw you down the drain for a frat or fraternity. And when I peeped that Roland Martin was a part of a fraternity, I knew that he was a bourgeois Negro who was easily controlled opposition. And that's when I stopped watching him. That's when I knew that this guy was wretched swine of a man. We have to be able to detect these fake ass, watered down, wannabe grassroots controlled opposition. And that's the reason why delineation is beautiful. Because I don't know, brother. I don't know, man. I got tether radar. You understand? And I'm just looking at things real different, family. My ears hear things very differently than before. I just remember years ago how things got past me, where I used to hear things, but I didn't see it for what it was. When Pan-Africanists used to say, we all African, I used to hear that and I didn't think twice about it. I used to say to myself, yeah, but my granny said, she don't say we African, but they keep saying we African. Why the hell do they keep saying that? They don't even know me. They know nothing about me. They don't know my genealogy. They don't know nothing about me. But people, for whatever reason, for their own interior motive, will try to put you in a category and put you in a box so they can define you, so they can control you. Now I see it, what the Pan-Africans were doing. You understand? They were putting Black Americans in a box so they can control the tempo, so they can control us by telling us what we were. So when it's time for them to get into political offices, they ain't got to compete. They can get into political office and then control what goes to Black Americans under the guise of being Black. But we didn't see that before. I see it now. I know the game now. I remember years ago when that Nigerian African dude assumed political office, and he said the first thing he wants to do when he gets in political office is get rid of Black History Month. That's when I started looking at this stuff differently, fam. I started looking at it differently. I saw it for what it was. I saw this controlled opposition. Why would a African man who's an immigrant want to assume political office, and the first thing he says he wants to do, family, is get rid of Black History Month? What the hell? Like, out of all the things you can do, that's what you want to do? That's when things started to become full circle for me. And I started to view this controlled opposition, and I started to view a lot of these individuals who claimed that they were grassroots or claimed that they were for Black people. I started to view them and see them for what they were. These are paid ops, family. Paid ops. People who are pretending. People who are trying to maneuver the Black American to being buried again. When we are unearthing ourselves and we are setting the record straight. And there are people, family, I'm telling you, who do not like the shit. Who want, wish, and pray we go back to Pan-Africanism. Who want, wish, and pray that we go back to wanting to take our asses to Africa. Who want, wish, and pray that we would stop talking about what we need here. Because the more we start talking about what we need here, the more we start talking about reparations, family. You understand? So it's important, family. It's very important that we're able to tell when we're under the guise of controlled opposition, and we're able to spot them right away. So they can't control us. They have no upper hand. They have no grassroots voice. You understand? None of them can speak for us.
King. Look. Let your angels sing. I ain't twisted, this ain't the Henny talking for me. This is literally Malcolm Little talking through me. I ain't possessed, this is just when spirit meets the flesh, and a revolutionary is born, nothing less. It's hard for me to cope with stress, especially when I see the world much different from the rest. I can't sleep, nightmares, waking up cold sweat, wondering if I ever made it, will they do me like the rest? It's for my Black souls who really too upset to rest, so they wander through my dreams. Please tell me what this means.